What happens when a conversation that's supposed to be simple suddenly turns into one of those live TV moments people talk about for days? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The show opened with the usual upbeat energy, music fading, audience cheering, and the hosts laughing among themselves as the camera panned across the table. Jason Momoa sat comfortably, smiling, giving a small wave to the crowd. It felt easy, relaxed, until Sunny Hostin leaned forward with that particular look she gets when she's ready to challenge a guest directly. Even Sarah glanced sideways as if knowing something tense might be coming. You could almost feel the audience collectively tune in closer. Sunny didn't waste time. Jason, before we even get into the movie, there's something a lot of people have been talking about, she said, her tone polite but pointed. She held a set of printed pages, tapping them lightly against the table. You did an interview last week where you talked about Hollywood pressure, and then in another interview a few days later, you said everything was great and you were grateful for the industry. Some people saw that as contradictory. So I need to ask you directly, which version is the truth? The audience murmured right away, low reactions, nothing explosive yet, but definitely engaged. Jason's smile faded a little, not in anger but in thought. Whoopi looked over at him as if silently asking, "You ready for this?" Jason shifted in his seat, straightened a little, and said calmly, "That's not exactly true." The moment he said it, the audience reacted with an audible "oh," like the first spark of something heating up. Sunny raised her eyebrows. "Okay," she said carefully, "so clarify it." Jason nodded slowly. "When I talk about pressure in the industry, I talk honestly. And when I talk about being grateful, that's also honest. Both things can be true. But when headlines take one sentence and run with it, it makes it seem like I'm contradicting myself. I'm not." Joy jumped in immediately, waving her pen. "Yeah, but honey," she said, leaning toward him, "sometimes you sound like you're on two different planets. You tell one outlet the business is crushing people, and then next minute you're saying it's wonderful." Jason let out a short breath, controlled but clearly feeling the need to push back. "Joy, I'm a human being. I can feel stress and gratitude at the same time. That's not living on two planets. That's being real." The audience clapped at that. A few whooped in support. Saya gave a tiny nod like she agreed. Sunny, however, wasn't finished. She folded her papers and rested them on the table. "I understand that," she said, "but to the public, it reads like you're walking back what you said. Did you exaggerate the first interview?" Jason shook his head firmly. "No, I didn't exaggerate. And I don't like the way you're framing it. You're making it sound like I lied. And that's not true." This time, the reaction was loud, gasps, murmurs, even a couple of surprised laughs. Whoopi leaned back, widened her eyes, and said under her breath but still fully audible, "Oh wow." That got a nervous ripple of laughter from the audience. Sunny didn't flinch. "I'm not calling you a liar, Jason. I'm asking for consistency." Jason leaned forward, elbows on his thighs, hands clasped. "And I'm giving it to you. But don't twist my words. I can talk about the hard part of my job without canceling out the good part. People forget that interviews happen in different moments. You ask me how I feel on a stressful week. Yeah, it's overwhelming. You ask me how I feel on a better week. I'm grateful. That's real." Sarah gently raised her hands. "Okay, let's slow it down. This is important." Jason's saying both interviews were honest. Sun is saying the public felt confused. That's where the tension is. Sunny nodded, but her expression stayed serious. "Jason, you know authenticity matters. When you speak, people pay attention. If you're open about stress, that's powerful. But changing the tone later makes people wonder." Jason laughed, but there was tension behind it. "Sunny, come on. You're acting like I'm running for office. I don't issue official statements. I live my life. I speak honestly depending on what's going on that day." Joy tapped her cards on the table loudly, an intentional tension breaker. "This is better than my soap operas," she said, earning a big laugh from the crowd. Whoopi leaned forward, grounding the moment. "Jason, let me ask something simple. When you said the industry was breaking people down, were you talking about yourself personally?" Jason paused, long enough that people shifted in their seats. Then he nodded. "Yeah, I was. I've been through tough periods. I've seen friends go through tough periods. The pace of all this stuff, movies, press, travel, it's a lot." Sunny softened a little. "Then why did it sound different later?" Jason looked at her directly. Because later I was talking about the joy of the work. And that part is real too. I don't want to wake up every day and complain. So when I had a good week, I said so. That doesn't erase the bad week. The audience applauded again, louder, more supportive. Sarah smiled gently. See, that actually makes a lot of sense. Jason leaned back again, visibly trying to relax, though his eyes stayed on Sunny like he expected another push. Look, he continued, people want everything to fit into one headline. But that's not how real life works. Sunny took a breath, then asked, so you stand by both interviews exactly as they were? No regrets. Jason chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. Sunny, I literally just clarified it. Right now. On this table. The crowd roared with laughter, some clapping, some shouting out small comments like tell her. And exactly. Whoopi waved her hands to keep things calm. Sunny wasn't done, though. People were confused. Jason interrupted, but gently. And I can't control how people interpret things. What I can control is telling the truth. And the truth is, I didn't walk anything back. Not once. The audience reacted again, cheers from some, surprised murmurs from others. The tension on set had shifted from uncomfortable to fascinating, the kind of moment viewers would replay over and over. Whoopi leaned on the table, exhaling dramatically as she glanced around. Well, she said, we're obviously not done with this conversation. And the studio fell into that unmistakable live TV silence, thick, expectant, and ready to explode, setting the stage for everything that was about to come next. The moment Whoopi said they weren't done, the audience buzzed again, and Jason shifted in his chair like he knew the next round was coming. Sunny adjusted her mic, leaned in, and said, Jason, let's go deeper then, since you say nuance matters. When you spoke about the industry breaking people down, you mentioned friends. Are you talking about a bigger problem in Hollywood, or was that a personal moment you were projecting outward? Jason blinked, clearly choosing his words carefully. Both, he said slowly. It's personal because I've lived it. And it's bigger because I've seen it. You see people burn out. You see pressure on family, mental health, all of it. But that doesn't mean we stop loving what we do. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That I understand. Because I think people expect celebrities to either love the lifestyle completely or hate it completely. But nobody talks about the in-between. Jason pointed lightly at her. Exactly. And most of life is the in-between. Sunny didn't let go of the thread. She leaned forward even more, elbows on the table. Okay, but when you say things like that publicly, your words become part of a larger conversation. People read into them. They connect it to the broader criticisms of Hollywood. So when you turn around and say everything's amazing, they feel misled. That's what I'm trying to get to. Jason gave a small laugh, shaking his head. You keep saying turn around. I didn't turn around from anything. I just said something different because I felt different that day. People change from one week to the next. Joy jumped in with her comedic timing. Oh, well, I change from hour to hour, sweetheart. You can't hold me accountable for anything before lunchtime. The crowd cracked up. Even Jason laughed, and the air loosened briefly, but only for a moment. Sunny went back in. But Jason, are you aware that you're a role model for young actors? Your emotional honesty matters to them. That's why clarity is important. Jason's expression tightened again, not angry but frustrated. Sunny, I get that. I really do. But don't confuse honesty with obligation. I'm not required to say the same thing in every interview just to make other people comfortable. Sometimes I'm stressed. Sometimes I'm joyful. I don't owe the world a scripted storyline. The audience applauded strongly again. Whoopi tapped the table twice, signaling that she wanted to take the conversation in a more grounded direction. Let me ask you this, Whoopi said. Do you feel like people expect celebrities to be perfect? Like, you're supposed to have one feeling at all times for the public? Jason nodded emphatically. 100%. People want you to fit into a box. But I'm not doing that. I'm not going to pretend. Sunny, however, interjected again. But Jason, when you say it's not true that you contradicted yourself, we have to be honest here. People heard something different. They weren't imagining it. Jason raised a hand slightly, trying to keep control of the tone. I know, and I'm telling you why. But hearing something a certain way doesn't mean that's what I said. That's the part that matters. Joy leaned towards Sarah and whispered loudly enough for the MIC to catch. Someone get popcorn. The audience cracked up again, but the tension underneath didn't disappear. Sarah tried to mediate. I think what's happening here is a communication disconnect. Jason's saying he meant both things. Sun is saying the public thought he didn't. So the conversation becomes about perception. Jason turned to Sarah with a grateful look. Yes, perception. That's the word. Sunny wasn't satisfied. But perception is shaped by your words, Jason. And I'm asking whether you feel any responsibility for that. Jason took a deep breath and leaned back, eyes closing briefly as if steadying himself. Then he sat forward again. Responsibility, yes. But responsibility doesn't mean I can't have changing emotions. It means I need to speak honestly. And I have. The audience applauded again, some louder than others, clearly picking sides. Whoopi stepped in. Sunny, let me flip the question. Do you think you're putting too much weight on his words? He's not a politician. Sunny pressed her lips together, thinking, then answered. I think public figures who speak about mental health have influence. That's all I'm saying. Jason held up a finger gently, not aggressively. And I respect that. Truly. But ask me the questions. Don't assume my intention. If you're asking me whether I regret speaking openly? No. Not for a second. Sarah smiled, nodding. I think that's fair. But Sunny went right back to the earlier comment he made. You said what I implied was not true. So let me be clear. I wasn't saying you lied, Jason. I was saying people felt like the message was mixed. Jason nodded slowly. Okay, fair. But the way you framed it earlier made it sound like I had gone back and changed my story. And that is what I'm saying is not true. Sunny looked at him, then down at her notes, then back up. Well, I can respect that clarification. It wasn't an apology, but it was a step. Jason took a breath like he was relieved there was finally some grounding. Look, I care about being transparent. I care about this industry. I care about the people in it. And I care about my fans. But I'm not going to become a rehearsed version of myself just because it makes interviews smoother. Joy tossed her hands up. Honestly, I don't even know what I said this morning, so I can't judge the man. More laughter. The tension dropped again, just a bit. Whoopi turned toward Jason. So what do you want people to understand from you today, if you could put it simply? Jason answered without hesitation. That I'm trying to be honest. And honest doesn't mean perfect consistency. It means giving you what I'm feeling in the moment. That's the truth. The audience applauded warmly, more unified this time. Sunny watched him, thoughtful, arms crossed now but no longer confrontational. Well, she said, I hear that. Jason looked right at her, calm, grounded. Good, because I meant it. Sarah smiled at both of them. Whoopi let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. Joy looked dramatically toward the camera. This is better than half the movies I've watched this year. The audience roared. But right as Whoopi reached for the next card, something unexpected shifted again. Subtle, but enough to change the feel of the room. And just like before, the conversation wasn't quite finished. The shift in the room was subtle but unmistakable, like everyone could sense something unresolved still hovering between Jason and Sunny. Whoopi started to move the discussion forward, flipping through her cards, but Sunny placed a hand lightly on the table, signaling she had one more thing to say. The audience immediately responded with a low hum. Everyone knew tension was about to creep back in. Sunny leaned toward Jason, her tone softer but still direct. Jason, I appreciate your honesty. I really do. But there's another layer here I want to address. Some people online said you sounded defensive in the second interview, like you were trying to protect your image. Do you think there's any truth to that? Jason's lips tightened, but not in anger, more like he was surprised the topic was returning. He tilted his head, rubbed the back of his neck, and said, Protect my image? I don't really think like that. I mean, I care about my reputation, sure, but I don't filter every word out of fear. That's not me. Joy jumped in instantly. Well, maybe you should, sweetie. This place eats people alive if they don't filter sometimes. The studio laughed, and Jason cracked a grin for a second before returning to the question. I was tired that day. That's the whole story. Tired. And the thing is, when you're tired, you're blunt. You say things raw. So if that reads as defensive, then, fine. But I wasn't trying to repair anything. Sunny still looked unconvinced. But there's a big difference between being tired and shifting your message. Jason clasped his hands together, leaning in again. Sunny, I didn't shift the message. I expanded it. There's a difference. The audience reacted with quiet nods, murmurs, some applause. Sarah took the opportunity to jump in. Can I say something? I think we're forgetting that interviews are snapshots. You catch someone on a Tuesday, they feel one way. You catch them on a Friday, it might be completely different. Jason pointed toward her again like earlier. Exactly. And if I pretend my feelings never change, then I'm lying. And I won't do that. Sunny took a breath, and her voice lowered. Okay, then let me ask it a different way. Do you feel pressure to keep your public image positive? Because I think that's what people are reacting to. Jason laughed softly, a little frustrated but keeping his composure. Of course there's pressure. I'm not going to pretend there isn't. But pressure isn't the same as dishonesty. If I wanted to be dishonest, my interviews would sound robotic. They don't. Sarah nodded. No, they don't. Joy waved her hand. Mine do. I forget half of what I'm supposed to say, and then I just wing it. The crowd erupted again, easing the tension momentarily. But Sunny leaned forward once more, determined to get clarity. I hear you, but the reason people felt confused is because mental health conversations are sensitive. So when someone as influential as you says one thing and then something that sounds like the opposite. Jason interrupted, but gently. It only sounds like the opposite if you ignore context. Sunny gave a small sigh. Context doesn't always make the headlines, Jason. Jason nodded. And that's the point. That's the problem. Headlines take 2 sentences from a 40-minute conversation and shape a story. So when people think I contradicted myself, it's because they are only reading the headline, not the message. Whoopi raised her hands, signaling she wanted to weigh in. Jason, this is a thing we see all the time. Headlines make drama. But let me ask, do you think you helped fuel that by sounding, well, emotionally inconsistent? The audience murmured like they knew this was another delicate moment. Jason looked at her, thoughtful. Maybe, he said finally. I can admit that. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Always have. But I'd rather be inconsistent emotionally than fake consistent. The audience applauded loudly, some with passionate cheers. Sunny was silent for a moment, truly silent, as if absorbing what he said. Then she spoke quietly. I respect that answer. Jason nodded. Thank you. But before the energy could settle completely, Anna Navarro, who had been unusually quiet this whole time, decided to jump into the conversation with her signature bluntness. Listen, she said, waving her hand. I think people are just dramatic. If the man says he feels stressed one week and grateful the next, maybe that's because he has a life. Everyone needs to relax. The room burst into laughter, but Sunny glanced at her sharply. It's not about being dramatic, Anna. It's about accountability in public conversations. Anna shrugged. He's being accountable right now. He's literally clarifying everything. What else is he supposed to do? Sign an emotional contract. Jason tried not to laugh but failed, covering his mouth. Some audience members shouted out little comments. Exactly. And thank you, being the loudest. Sunny rolled her eyes slightly but smiled. I'm not asking for an emotional contract, Anna. I'm asking for clarity. Jason leaned forward again. And I'm giving it. Right here. Right now. Whoopi stepped in with her calm voice. Okay. Deep breaths. All of you. Joy stretched dramatically in her chair. I'm exhausted and I've barely said anything. Another wave of laughter loosened the room again, but the conversation had clearly moved into a deeper emotional space. The tension was still there, subdued but not gone. Sarah looked at Jason. Can I ask something a little more personal? Only if you're comfortable. Jason gestured for her to go ahead. When you did that first interview, were you actually talking about burnout? Jason paused. Really paused. He took a deep breath, eyes lowering, then looked back up at her. Yeah, he said softly. I was. The audience went quiet as he continued. I've had moments this year where I felt like I was running on fumes. My schedule's been insane. And when you're exhausted, you talk differently. You think differently. You feel differently. Sunny watched him closely, her expression shifting to something more empathetic. Jason held eye contact with her as he finished. So if the second interview sounded more positive, it's because by that time, I felt better. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't correcting myself. I was recovering. The audience applauded warmly. Some even gave a standing clap from the back rows. Sunny slowly nodded. That actually makes a lot of sense. Jason smiled gently. I'm glad. Sarah touched her chest, visibly moved. Thank you for saying that. Anna shrugged with a grin. See, he's just human. Like the rest of us. Whoopi leaned toward Jason. Do you feel better now? Jason laughed. Honestly, yeah, I do. Joy shook her head playfully. Well, good, because I need you in a good mood for the next segment. The audience roared again, the atmosphere finally lighter, but the conversation wasn't quite finished. Something still lingered in the air, something waiting to be addressed before the show could move toward its finale. The atmosphere began to settle, but everyone at the table, and everyone in the audience, knew there was one more wave coming. These kinds of conversations don't just fade. They shift, simmer, and rise again before they truly end. Jason looked more relaxed now, his shoulders loose, his posture no longer defensive. Sunny, while calmer, still had the focused look of someone who had one last point she needed to address before she could let the topic go. Whoopi glanced around the table. All right, she said. Before we move on, I think there's something important we haven't touched on yet. It's not just about interviews, it's about what happens after interviews. The reactions. The online whirlwind. The audience hummed again with interest, sensing the final turn of the conversation. Jason nodded slowly. Yay, that part gets intense. Sarah leaned forward. Jason, what was it like the moment those interviews went public? Did you see the reactions right away? Or did someone tell you? Jason rubbed his hands together thoughtfully. Honestly, I didn't even check at first. I was on set. Then my phone started buzzing nonstop. Texts from friends, from people in the industry, from people who thought I was having some kind of meltdown. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. I had one friend text, "Bro, blink twice if you're okay." The audience burst into laughter. Even Sunny smiled. But, Jason continued, what really hit me was the online comments. People saying I was in crisis, saying I was turning on Hollywood, or that I was backtracking. And I remember sitting there thinking, man, people are really reading into this. Sunny lifted a hand. See, but that's my point. That's why I pressed you. Because the reactions were huge. People truly thought something was wrong. Jason nodded. And that's fair. But that's also how fast things explode. One clip gets taken out of context and suddenly it's a narrative. Anna added quickly, that's the internet. Everybody becomes a therapist or a critic. Joy whispered loudly enough for the microphone. Or a troll, which got a strong wave of laughter from the room. But Sunny wasn't done yet. She turned to Jason again. And did any of that affect you? Like, emotionally? Jason let out a long breath. Yeah, it did. His voice softened. I'm not gonna pretend it didn't. It's weird having strangers think they know exactly what's going on inside your head. Some comments were supportive, but others. They make you think. Sarah nodded, almost motherly. That must be hard. Jason continued. It made me feel like no matter what I say, whatever the truth is, someone is gonna twist it. So today, being here, being able to actually talk it through, it feels good. It feels like I get to reset the narrative. Sunny listened with genuine consideration now. I appreciate you saying that. Jason smiled gently at her. And I appreciate you pushing me, even if it got a little heated. The audience laughed again, but it was warm this time, supportive, not reactive. Whoopi tapped the table. Well, let's talk about the aftermath. Because once things blew up online, the media started running with it. How did the studio react? Did they call you? Jason let out a groan and covered his face for a moment, making the audience laugh. Oh man. The studio called immediately. They were like, Jason, are you okay? Do we need to issue a statement? And I'm like, no statements. Please. No statements. I'm fine. Anna leaned in. Did you at any point consider putting out a clarification? Jason shook his head. No, because clarification was only going to add fuel. The more you say, the more people twist it. So I stayed quiet. Sunny, surprisingly, nodded in agreement. That was probably smart. Jason raised an eyebrow jokingly. So now you agree with me. She laughed. Now I understand you better. That's different. The audience applauded loudly, enjoying the moment of mutual respect after the earlier tension. Joy pointed her finger between them dramatically. See? Gross. The crowd erupted again. Sarah looked out toward the audience, then back to Jason. Can I ask, after everything that happened online, did you feel nervous coming here today, knowing we were going to talk about it? Jason paused, giving the question real thought. Yeah, he admitted. I did. I wasn't sure how far it was gonna go. I wasn't sure how tough the questions would be. And I wasn't sure how emotional I might get. Sunny softened even more. We're not here to attack you. Jason smiled. I know, but you're here to hold me accountable. And that's okay. That's why I came. The audience clapped again, this time slower, more heartfelt, like they genuinely appreciated the honesty unfolding in front of them. Whoopi then leaned toward him. So what do you want people, your fans, the press, the folks watching this right now, to understand about you that they maybe didn't understand during all this? Jason sat up straighter and spoke clearly, with no hesitation. I want people to understand that I'm human. I feel things deeply. My job is amazing, but it's hard sometimes. I can be overwhelmed one day and grateful the next. And none of that means I'm being dishonest. It means I'm being real. A strong round of applause filled the studio, this time unified and warm. Sunny nodded. That's fair. And I respect that. Truly. Jason smiled at her. Thank you. Whoopi looked to the audience. All right. Before we wrap this segment, Jason, how are you feeling now compared to when we started? Jason let out a laugh. Honestly, a lot better. Like I've had a long therapy session on live television. Joy clapped her hands dramatically. That'll be $200, sweetheart. Pay on your way out. The audience roared. Anna added, and leave a tip, which made Jason double over with laughter. Sarah shook her head playfully. Chaos. Always chaos with this table. The energy finally felt light, genuinely light, for the first time since the segment began. The earlier intensity had transformed into something softer, more connected, and far more human. Whoopi looked directly into the camera. Well, folks, you saw it happen right here. Real conversation, real tension, real clarity. And that's why we do this show. The audience applauded again, standing in clusters throughout the studio. Sunny placed a hand on her chest and said quietly but sincerely, "Thank you, Jason." Jason nodded back with equal sincerity. "Thank you." As the applause continued, the camera panned across the audience, people whispering to each other, some smiling, some still in shock over how intense the segment had been. A few held up their phones, already checking social media for reactions. And reactions were rolling in quickly. Tweets speculating about tension, Instagram stories praising Jason for honesty, Facebook discussions debating who was right or wrong. The internet was already buzzing, clips being shared, opinions forming. Whoopi looked back into the camera for the final word. Let us know what you think of the conversation. And make sure to share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories. The music swelled, the studio lights brightened, and the segment faded out, leaving viewers with one of the most emotionally raw, unexpectedly intense conversations the show had seen all year.